Hey guys, Tisha here, and we are back for another Love Times 3 book review. If you have not done so already, go ahead and hit that doorbell, ding dong, that good old thumbs up button. It's just a way of letting me know that you're here, and it also helps me in the algorithm. Now, before I get started on chapter 11, I want you all to know that we are almost finished. Like, we are on page 241 of this book. I know, where does time go? But don't worry, because our next book was suggested by one of you all, and it's going to be regarding Jill Duggar. Now, I haven't watched the Duggars for a really, really long time, and I'm actually excited about the book because this book here caught me by surprise. So this was also suggested by one of you guys. So I figured, okay, you didn't steer me wrong with that one. So maybe you're not going to steer me wrong with the next one. But let's go ahead and get started. I've ran my mouth enough. This is chapter 11, My Three Moms. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Martin Luther King Jr. Oh, wouldn't this been cool if I actually read it on Martin Luther King's birthday? That would have been neat. Anyways, it's still January, so go ahead on Martin Luther. This is coming from Laura. At the time, she's age 18, and she is Alina's oldest daughter. When I was little, I thought there were two types of families. Some had one mom and some, like mine, had two. Neither kind of family seemed weird or wrong to me. I knew that Alina was my real mom, but I could go to Mom Vic too if I needed anything. I wonder if she really called her Mom Vic, or if she's saying Mom Vic just for the purposes of this story, because I know with the Browns, you hear them say the moms, but then when they were little, I'd never really heard the kids refer to them as mom. They would just be like Christine this and Robin that and Mary that. So it makes me wonder if these children did say mom and then whoever that mom was. Our home was on a large property where several other families within the Duggar clan lived. I was as close to their children as I was to my siblings. We didn't play video games or watch much television when I was young. Instead, we were full of imagination. We had a closet full of toys and loved playing with the little plastic cowboys and Indians, ponies, Lincoln Logs, and Legos. Mostly we were outside playing together. We could turn a pile of rocks into in a five-star hotel. I think that that's one of the nice things about coming from a family with a lot of kids. I also think that this depends on what areas that you live in, because when I lived in New York, I was not playing a whole bunch outside. Not if I was like in Brooklyn. Now, when I was in the other part where my other family resides, in their homes and stuff like that, I could play in the backyard, and we did go out in the backyard and things of that nature. But sometimes children being able to go outside and play really does depend on the area that you're in. When I was 7, my dad married Aunt Val, bringing her and her 5 children into our family of 11. Val had always been my fun, cool aunt, and thinking of her as a mom felt weird at first. I had a hard time getting used to them being part of our family. Val's daughter, Amanda, is 8 months older than I am, and despite our totally opposite personalities, we had been best friends. Now, I had to accept her as a sister. That is different. We began competing with each other, especially for my dad's attention. I'm not surprised about that. Amanda needed a lot of love, support, and guidance, and I sometimes felt overlooked. I am sure that much like what happened with the Browns, that they took a lot of time to make those other children who were being added onto the family feel very included. And in that process, you will have some children feel left out. So this is their daughter letting us know that during that time period, Laura, she did feel left out. Amanda needed a lot of love, support, and guidance, and I sometimes felt overlooked. I was homeschooled until 3rd grade, and one of my first lessons in public school was that my family was different. I took the school bus, as did several children from another polygamous family, who I'll call the Smiths. They were fundamentalist Mormons like us, but were much more conservative. The boys wore dark pants and long sleeve shirts to school, while the girls wore long dresses that covered their bodies. The children spoke with a southern Utah drawl, which made them stand out further. One day, as the bus stopped to pick up the Smiths kids, a boy leaned out of the window and yelled, "Polygamous!" All the kids on the crowded bus laughed. As the Smiths took their seats, some kids began teasing them. I gotta be real. If I heard somebody yell out the window, "Polygamous," I wouldn't laugh. I don't think that that's anything that's funny. I was always one of those kids that find things that everybody else may find to be funny, not funny. Like, I'm goofy now. I laugh at really silly things now, but things that other people might find hilarious, I might just be like, and the word polygamous definitely wouldn't have been something that as a kid I would have laughed about, even now as an adult. For the first time, I felt a twinge of embarrassment. Is a family like mine a bad thing, I wondered? No one knew that, like the Smiths, I came from a polygamous family. The teasing was relentless for the rest of the year, but I never spoke up to defend the Smiths. Even when other kids joked about starting a movement they called the Polygamous Pants, anonymous to get them modern clothing, I changed. That was a weird sentence. Sorry, y'all. I changed schools almost every year between 5th grade and my last year in high school, mostly because I was in the gifted and talented student program, and it was available only at certain schools, which were not in my neighborhood. One good thing about that, I was able to avoid being shadowed by my polygamous background since my siblings and cousins went to different schools. I found out the hard way that some people's attitudes changed once they knew about my family. I had a big circle of friends, and I invited one girl over to my house without telling her anything about my parents. I didn't explain anything at the house either, but she saw all my moms. The next day I went to her house. Her mom drilled me. "Who's your dad? Do all your moms live together?" Not long after that, the other girls ostracized me. I never invited a friend from that group to my home ever again. I learned to change the subject whenever I was asked personal questions. Mom Vic became my aunt. Whenever we talked about these kinds of situations as a family, my dad would say, if someone asks if you're a polygamist, ask if they're a bigot. I appreciated his support. Gracious Joe. Are you a polygamist? Are you a bigot? Like, what? I'm just thinking, for them to be so young and they have to have that, it's sad. I'm not trying to laugh at the fact, but I'm just laughing at the fact that he's like, if somebody says to you, just ask if they're a bigot. No big deal. I appreciated his support, but it was not particularly helpful advice for a 5th grader. Exactly. Still, I learned at a young age about the misunderstandings and prejudices people have about fundamentalist culture. I learned to divide school and home into different worlds. Life at home was pretty good. I never saw my parents in a disagreement. Any issues my parents had were worked out in private, rarely affecting family time or their relationships with us. My parents taught me to work out my own disputes as they did. Whenever I had a fight with a sibling or a friend, I was aware of how much respect and love my parents had for each other and for every child in the family. My mom and I have a great relationship, but I'm emotionally closer to my dad and turned to him a lot as a child. That's interesting. No, let me not say that's interesting, because I'm the same way. It took a while for us to have a great relationship, but I talked to my dad more openly about things even before I talked to my mom. To bring it even home even more, you guys, and this is me going on one of my rants again. When I started developing, my mom didn't take me to go get a training bra. My dad did. I know. That's how close I was to my dad, and still am. That's my boy. I can talk to my dad about anything and always count on him to be there for me. The moms are all good at different things, so growing up, it was like having a super mom at home. If I needed help with cooking or sewing, I would ask Aunt Val. If I wanted to talk about personal problems, I would seek out my mom. Oh no, not her mom. I would seek out Mom Vic. So that's the other twin. I was a really good student and excelled at my studies. In 8th grade, my parents placed me in a charter school they thought would offer a better educational challenge for me. That year, a girl named Margaret was in my class, and everyone suspected she came from a polygamous family. She wore long skirts over pants, socks, and sneakers, and kept her long hair twisted into a French braid. She got teased mercilessly. One day at lunch, a friend wondered aloud whether Margaret wore the skirt pants combo because she was a polygamist or a hermaphrodite. Gracious. For the second time in my life, I didn't say anything when someone else was taunted for the way of life that I shared. But my thoughts were in turmoil. How was that fair to her, I thought. What if I were on the opposite end of that comment? Someone has to stand up for the Margarets of the world. I thought back to my bus rides and how I kept silent when the Smith children were teased, and I was ashamed of myself. That is a difficult position to be in, because I know that I've stood up for other people at times who were being teased, and I ended up getting caught up in some mess doing it. But you do take a chance when you do that. That summer, I finally had a chance to speak up on behalf of all the Margarets and Smiths and other kids I knew who were treated unfairly because they came from polygamous families. I participated in a youth rally in Salt Lake City, which was organized to give kids a chance to speak about their experiences growing up in plural families. There were a couple hundred people there, and dozens of kids spoke. I talked about our constitutional right to practice freedom of religion and how preservation of that right is so important. I really enjoyed seeing so many teenagers whose families and values were similar to mine. For once, I could be openly proud of my polygamous heritage, despite people driving by the rally who shouted insults at us. I just don't see the point in that. You don't got to agree with what is the... You don't have to agree with the protest. You don't have to agree with the rally. You don't have to agree with what's being said. You insulting someone doesn't help anything. It just causes more chaos and confusion. And guess what? They're still going to spew whatever it is they want to spew. In September, I went with Aunt Val and Amanda to New York to appear on the Dr. Keith Abloh show. I thought Keith Abloh was friendly and respectful, allowing us to respond to his questions with our own opinions. It was really interesting to watch the audience during the show. There was a lot of tension in the air at first, and I could tell people weren't sure if they would take us seriously. After a while, though, I could feel the audience lightening up as they realized we weren't so much different from them after all. But as I entered high school, my rebellious side began to emerge. I resented my parents for the teasing, scrutiny, and rude comments I had to go through because of our family. I felt alone and unsure of who I was and what I believed. I was proud and stubborn. I wouldn't ask for help when I needed it, and the lessons I learned about dealing with prejudice and standing up for myself were learned the hard way. I became a real smartass at school. It was so bad, my science teacher had me move to a different class. Okay, you doing too much, hon. Can't be doing all that. All I cared about was how I looked, my friends, and hanging out with the cool crowd, especially boys. I began sneaking out of the house at night. I wanted so was that the child they were talking about that they caught, that the mom realized was sneaking out? Or was this more than one? I wanted nothing to do with the polygamous culture, and at home, all I did was fight with my parents. They never reacted with anger, no matter how difficult I was. She better be happy that those were her parents, because my mama, y'all just don't know. She's changed a lot, but my mom, she's short and she's feisty, and I could look at her wrong and she had fist balled up. My dad would tell me, teen rebellion is a choice, and I respond, oh, and I'm choosing it all right. Oh, I know for a fact that these kids weren't abused. I know they weren't abused. Because you see these teeth in my mouth? Gone. Where are they? Me no know. Gone. Ain't no way. There is no way I would have got away with that. I was still in this rebellious phase as I started 10th grade. Every kid raised in a polygamous family reaches a point where she or he has to come to terms with the lifestyle and decide what role she wants the fundamentalist faith to play in his or her own life. I was 16 when I reached that moment. My older brother Joseph was a senior that year, and he was very popular. Everybody called me Little Darger. For once, it felt okay to be identified with my siblings. Telling people about my family wasn't such a big deal anymore. I didn't care what they thought, and I was encouraged that our lifestyle was even accepted in some ways due to Joseph's paving the way. There were rude comments here and there, but overall, the misunderstandings and misperceptions only served to make me a stronger person. It was a turning point for me in accepting my family and wanting to live according to the gospel principles of love, virtue, and honesty. I graduated a year earlier from high school and took a year off before going to college. I lived at home and helped supervise the homeschooling for some of my younger siblings. In my free time, I took up painting and taught myself to play the guitar. I love spending time with my family. We always have fun. Whether we are celebrating someone's birthday, spending the day in the park, or going to visit our grandparents, or taking a drive through the mountains to see the leaves changing color. Oh, that is the most calming thing, is driving and seeing all the trees and all the variations in color is so beautiful, especially when you're the passenger in the vehicle and you can really take it in. My parents took us on a lot of 3-car road trips to places like Disneyland, Lake Tahoe, and Mexico. Everywhere we went, people stared, but we didn't care. So unlike the Browns, they were doing these things on their own dime. This family was self-made, and this family seems to have put in a lot of effort to ensure that their family remained connected. And this is coming from one of their teenage children, who at the time is 18, but just goes to show you how some of the children thought. There are a lot of different character traits in my family, which makes living together interesting and lively. I have funny siblings, shy ones and logical, athletic and outspoken ones too. As one of the oldest children, I often looked at my younger siblings. I love kids, and I never minded babysitting at all because I look forward to having my own family. Wow. I'm glad to experience what works and what doesn't work in raising children. Every one of my brothers and sisters contributes to my life, like different colors in one vast painting. It's difficult for me to imagine a family without so many people in it. Today, some of my closest friends are the cousins I grew up with. And with enough love and support, Amanda and I were able to work out most of our differences and develop into 2 different but equally beautiful people. She is one of my best friends. That says a lot. That says a lot. However, living in such a big family can be challenging. All of my siblings have different ideas, preferences, beliefs, talents, and ambitions. It can be difficult to reconcile so many points of view, which is often a determinant to my family harmony. My parents do an incredible job of keeping the peace and keeping our family running smoothly, managing with our help what would normally be 3 separate families, from 3 meals a day to laundry for over 20 people, household cleaning, gardening, and yard care. My parents are great examples of hardworking, selfless givers. I really admire them for that. I wonder if she's saying all of this because she knew her parents were going to read it. Like, she hasn't said a bad thing yet. There's something bad about every parent, let's be clear. Everything they earn goes to family. My parents think of themselves only after their children are taken care of. Greed has no place in a family like ours. My parents gave me a foundation of strong values, responsibility, respect, communication, honesty, self-control, selfishness, and most important, accountability and repentance. Looking back at my childhood, I realized that the teasing and the questions made me face my fears and insecurities and develop a strong character at a much younger age than most people do. My parents encouraged me to explore other religions while I was growing up, but nothing I saw in organized religion drew me in. I've embraced my fundamentalist faith. Some of my other siblings don't share the same belief in it. People often ask me whether I expect to live plural marriage. I can't answer that question. I'm still changing and developing. I know it's a hard lifestyle, one that requires a lot of sacrifice. It's not for the faint of heart. I am nowhere near close to making that kind of decision right now, but I deserve to have the choice open to me. Now we have Caleb. He's age 20, and this is Vicky's oldest son. I was the second born in our family, arriving on the scene 7 months after my brother Joe. My parents had me in violin lessons by the time I was 4, and within a couple years, I was performing in a family band called the Silver Strings. We played at fairs, banquets, and company parties, and were quite a hit. When I was 7, I was photographed performing with the band and landed on the front page of the Salt Lake Tribune, Utah's biggest newspaper. I'm probably gonna look this up right. Everyone was really excited for me, but I was nervous and almost paranoid. From a young age, I knew my family was different from most other families, and I was afraid that the state would use the photograph to come find me and take me away from my parents. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. To have to worry about that at such a young age. My parents taught us at home first, but when I was 10, homeschooling became too much for my parents to handle. Midway through the year, they enrolled my siblings and me into a public school. My dad sat us down the night before our first day, prepared to answer our many questions. Some of us were already involved in community sports, so we wouldn't completely be backwards socially. But some siblings had questions. Will they be rude to us? Do they know about us? Joe, Annalina's son, was in the same grade at school, but we were put into different classes. We've always been close growing up like twins, but now we avoided each other so we didn't get the inevitable questions such as, how are you all related? Okay, so he calls his other mom, who also happens to be his actual aunt, Aunt Alina. No. I'm wrong. This is his cousin. Okay, so it sounds like some of them say mom and some of them say aunt. Yeah, because he said Joe, who's Aunt Alina's son. And this is coming from Vicky's oldest child, Vicky is cousins with Alina. Okay, I'm back. So they, more than anything, call the other mom's aunt. They don't necessarily call them mom. Okay. How are you all related? Saying we were brothers would bring on a slew of new questions. How does that work? You don't look anything alike. We tried telling people we were cousins, but that didn't work either. How come you live in the same house? Why do you get picked up in different cars every day? Eventually, we decided to call ourselves stepbrothers, but that still didn't stop the questions. Kids are relentless, and we were easy targets. Luckily, I was good at making friends. One day I was hanging out with a friend I'd known for a while when my mom called me home. My friend, who lived about a mile from the house, insisted on going home with me. He wouldn't take no for an answer. I spent the whole walk trying to figure out a way to tell him about my family. As we neared my driveway, I finally said, my dad's a polygamist. I know, he said. That was it. I'm sure he figured he would have all his questions answered in about 30 seconds. My siblings were certainly surprised to see someone not related to them in our house. It was the first time any of us had brought home a school friend. Wow. Some people had a lot more questions once they caught on to our lifestyle, but they didn't know how to ask them. I love the questions because I love changing people's misconceptions about my family. There were some questions, though, that didn't deserve an answer. One time, a friend's mom asked if all my siblings slept in the same bed. I laughed in her face. She watched too many cartoons in her life. I had 19 siblings by that time. I was 14. But take away the numbers, and we were like any other family. A lot of times, my family would get wrongly associated with people like Warren Jeffs, the FLDS prophet. I didn't like it when that happened. I didn't know anything more about him or his group than the average person does. And the things I heard about him didn't sound like anything like what my experience had been. Music has always been a huge part of my life. When I was in 8th grade, I saved up $100 and my dad put in another $100 so I could buy myself an electric guitar. This new guitar was black and white and gorgeous, my most prized possession. I would race home from school every day to play it. After a few months, I had written several songs. That Christmas, one of my friends got a bass guitar and another got a drum set. We decided to start a band. I would walk a mile every day to practice. Our early influences were bands like Blink-182, but as I got older, I gravitated towards darker music. Bands like Census Fail. My band collection, a small following, and I was getting a good amount of attention at school, especially from girls. I started secretly dating one girl in particular. I was in love, but she was like the devil on my shoulder. I began sneaking out in the middle of the night, sometimes just with her, sometimes with other kids. Okay, so remember earlier I said how many kids were sneaking out at night? Here's yet another kid that was sneaking out at night. One night, my parents found my bed empty. I didn't have a cell phone, so my dad called a friend who happened to be with me. Anyone recognize this number, my friend asked? Since the number came up without a name, I looked at the screen, which showed my parents' number. I figured I was already in trouble, so I didn't bother responding. Then a text came in. If you're not home in 5 minutes, we're calling the cops. I ran the whole way home. My iPod, skateboard, and guitar had all been confiscated in my absence, and I was grounded. Shortly after that episode, I came to my senses and dumped my girlfriend, but I was still making stupid decisions. I was about to say, that's not your girlfriend's fault that you did all of that. My friend had an older brother who was about one color short of a rainbow. One night we talked him into driving us to meet up with some girls. One girl's mom brought us 2 6-packs of Bacardi coolers. Wow, what a cool mom, I thought. I can't imagine my mom doing this. I drank a couple and got a little buzz. It got late and we headed home. We had made sure my friend's brother didn't drink anything, but he was spacey enough by nature that he forgot to turn on the car's headlights. We got pulled over by a cop who immediately smelled alcohol and called for backup. Oh boy. Off of some Bacardi coolers? Let me be quiet. Because my first drink was Sky Blue wine cooler. It was my freshman year of college. College hadn't even started yet. I wasn't even there for a full 24 hours. And I was nice off a little wine cooler too, so I can't say anything. Okay. 3 more cops pulled up. One officer called my parents and my dad drove up within minutes, searching to, oh no, okay, let me try this again. 3 more cops pulled up, screeching to a halt, and then storming across the road towards us was my dad. He approached the officer who was writing out a ticket for me. The cop took one look at my dad and dropped his pen. I think he's gonna be worse off in your hands, he said, putting away his pad. After I got in my dad's car, he drove upward of 100 miles, an hour along the deserted streets leading to our house. Finally, he pulled over to the side of the road. He seemed so mad. Okay, his father was probably extremely mad for multiple reasons. I'm going to assume that one of the things that they're not supposed to do in their faith is drink, but we'll see. I almost expected him to hit me, but I sneaked a peek at his face and realized he looked like someone had died. Of all my children, I never thought it would be you, he said. You are old enough to make your own decisions, but do you really want this on your conscience? He went on for a bit in that vein. I didn't say a word. I expected to be grounded at the least, but there was no punishment named. My dad didn't talk to me for a week, though. He was that upset. I guess that was all I needed. It was a major turning point for me. I realized that being honest and upfront was so much easier than trying to keep track of all my lies. That's true. From then on, I had a really good relationship with all of my parents. There is nothing like knowing that you have disappointed your parents, especially if it's a parent that you hold at a certain level. That's all it took for him, because he obviously really had a certain level of respect for his father. By the time I got to high school, I didn't really fit in anywhere. I didn't relate to the jocks, and I didn't do drugs or drink, but I didn't feel accepted by most of the Mormons either. I found a place with the straight edge kids, a subculture of the punk music scene that's called for a clean and sober lifestyle, abstaining from tobacco, alcohol, and drugs. Some straight edgers were militant about their views, which is why my parents didn't like where I was headed. They told me I would be judged because of my clothes, music, and friends, but I didn't see it. They were worried, particularly since a couple years earlier, a cousin of mine was with his straight edge friend when they got into a fight and ended up killing someone. How are they supposed to be straight edge and you killing people? Thou shalt not kill. I was never very rigid about it, but putting a label like that on myself made it almost impossible to avoid violence. Still doing so helped me stay away from a lot of the other negative behaviors. Music became my outlet. I started another band and we began to play wherever we could. Our drummer got into a lot of hot water by becoming involved with other people's girlfriends, and he dragged us into drama. Normally, I would never hang out with someone like him, but that was one of the sacrifices I made to play music. Eventually, it all started becoming unsafe to play or to be seen in certain areas because of his antics and other developments in the local straight edge scene. One night, we played a show in the garage of a friend's house. We were just packing up when a group of straight edge kids appeared out of the night. They were wearing bandanas and hoods and carrying weapons, quick sticks, baseball bats, brass knuckles. A huge fight broke out. Oh, goodness. We fought them off for a while, and then they retreated down the road. My friend and I decided to get out while we could. We had parked at the church down the road. It turned out that's where the attackers had gathered to plan their next move. They saw us crossing the parking lot and started running towards us. Just as we got in and locked the doors, they swarmed my car. It was like an awful scene of a movie. I could hear them crawling over my roof and punching at my car window. See, this is why I just can't do it. I'm so happy that my son don't like to go to a whole bunch of places, because this got me in my, ooh. And obviously he's okay because he's telling the story, but goodness gracious. I was fully aware of the situation, but completely calm. It was as though something or someone was controlling me. I started the car and backed up. Then someone bashed my window in. I snapped out of my trance and sped off. I quit my band and began to rethink the direction my life was heading. I wonder what his father had to say about that window. I had felt good about the straight edge movement until that point, but after that night, I lost whatever passion I had left for it. We were supposed to be standing up for the same things, and yet here we were all fighting with each other. It wasn't what I signed up for. By my last year in high school, I started listening to different artists and styles of music. One that I had particularly connected with was Bob Dylan. I immersed myself in his songs, dissecting each and every word. I started writing folk songs on my own under the name of Mighty. I began to love everything about folk music. It's so timeless, gives me a lot of creativity as an artist, and allows me to reflect on my cultural roots. After going through lots of different lineups, my brother Jed and I now have a full band. I was 17 when I graduated from high school. I've since moved out, and I'm going to college. I have no reservations about my family. I'm very close with all my mothers, though I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a special connection between my biological mom and me. People often ask how my dad does it with 3 wives and 12 plus children. The answer is pretty simple. My dad has an incredible time management skills. He doesn't come home and turn on the television when he's home. He catches up with his kids and works to stay involved in all of our lives. That's something that we did not see with the Browns. We would see Cody sit down, lay down, whatever, on the couch while everything else was going on around him. And here we have this young man saying that his father didn't basically have time for himself because he was pouring into his family once he got home. I love my family, and my background hasn't been nearly as much as an obstacle for me as some of my other siblings. I was always pretty open about it. Even though some people had misconceptions and prejudices, I always felt that after meeting my family, their negative opinions would go away. For me, my parents are a great example of people living the best way they know how and making it work. I have a strong testimony of Jesus Christ, but I struggle with faith all the time. Right now, I don't see myself following in my parents' footsteps. It's hard enough for me to find woman who's a good match, but I can't say definitively yes or definitively no, because there's no telling what the future holds. This is Amanda, age 19. She's Valerie's oldest daughter. My earliest childhood memories are from Pleasant Valley, where I grew up surrounded by lots of sisters who were my age. Aunt S, Aunt C, and Aunt C, goodness gracious, a lot of C's. My other moms cared for me just like any of their own kids. We went freely from one house to another to eat and play, but unless there was a sleepover, we always went home at night. We had a great time playing with the cows, lambs, and chickens our families kept. But the best times we had were in a huge junkyard at the edge of the property, an area full of old cars. We climbed in one and pretend we were going somewhere. There was a giant truck that had a steering wheel so big you could slip your legs through its openings and rock back and forth. We'd fight at times, as siblings do, but after a 20-second rebound, we'd be back at it. As far as I could tell, our lives were perfect, but when I was 7, my mom moved us to Montana. We stayed at a grandmother's house on the way, where my mom sat us down in a spare bedroom to tell us what was happening. When she said she and my dad were divorcing, I started bawling. My older brother Sam looked at me and then said to my mom, "She's so stupid. She always cries." Then he started crying, and soon all of the younger kids were crying too. Not because they understood what was going on and what was happening, but just because we were crying. My mom tried to make us feel better about the change, but it was hard. I missed my family that was still in Pleasant Valley, though I figured we would be going back there eventually. That's the idea my dad planted in my thoughts the few times he called. One day, all of his wives, would come back to him, he said. Sam, who was 9, stepped in as the father figure in our family. My brother was awesome at taking care of me, no matter what. One day, a bunch of kids got into a huge snowball fight. One of my brother's friends threw a snowball that hit me in the stomach and hard enough that I started to cry. My brother tackled his friend and said, "Don't you ever hit my sister again." I know that's right. I know that's right. I'm the oldest. And best believe, you could try if you want to. It would never happen. They're going to get you. Sam made sure I always had someone to walk with to school and never let anyone pick on me. My parents' divorce was harder on him than anyone else. Sam was more scared about the situation, which is why he thought he had to be so strong. We hadn't been in Montana too long when we moved again, this time to a trailer next to my cousin's house in Utah. I had a hunch what was going on, but I didn't want to believe it. A few days after our move, my mom told me she was going to marry my Uncle Joe, my cousin's dad. I didn't want my mom to marry someone else because that meant she wasn't going to go back to my dad. My older brother had a hard time with it too, but I knew it was really happening after I saw Uncle Joe give my mom a quick kiss one day. After their marriage, we continued to live in the trailer for a couple years. My brother would talk to us at night as we fell asleep, telling us it was all going to be all right. I had always been close to my Aunt Alina's daughter, Laura, since we were the same age, but we developed an instant rivalry, once my mom married Uncle Joe. When I was 10, we moved into the main house with the other families. Our parents put Laura and me in the same bedroom. We had fun together at times, making up songs and planning a future band, but mostly we fought. It got so bad, our parents moved me into a bedroom with my younger sister. My new bedroom was next to Aunt Alina's room, so we became really close. She was the mom I could joke with and always have a good time with. She also was the mom I talked to when I was too scared to go on my own to my mom. Okay, so they call the other mom's aunt. That's the consensus. For a time, my relationship with Aunt Vic was more strained. I'm stubborn and Aunt Vic is blunt. She didn't hold back in telling me when I fell short, which often hurt my feelings. It made me better, stronger person in the end, and I love her very much now. As for my new dad, he was Uncle Joe, and I was determined to keep it that way. I was angry when I saw how easily my 3 younger siblings were 20 months, 3 years, and 6 years old, accepted Uncle Joe as their father. Like my older brother, I resisted Uncle Joe's efforts to build a relationship. I do like that they did not make these kids call him daddy, like what Robin did. Sam had such a hard time adjusting to our new family that when he was 14, he went to live with my dad. Oh, wow. I really missed him. I felt I had lost my big brother and my protector, and it was devastating for my mom, who felt helpless and didn't know how to reach him. Since then, Sam has drawn closer to my mom again. My mom and Uncle Joe often talk to me about how important it was to be open and communicate, to work at a good relationship. I didn't want that to happen, but despite that wall I put up, I began to see how much Uncle Joe really cared about us and how hard he was trying to make everything work. I slowly began to accept him, but I continued to call him Uncle Joe, even though I knew it would mean a lot to him to be referred as my dad. Finally, when I was 15, I wrote Uncle Joe a letter on his birthday about what he meant to me. As I handed it to him, I gave him a hug and said, "Happy birthday, Dad." Wow. I don't know why that just made me teary-eyed. That's so awesome because he didn't force it. Even though it was something that he wanted, he didn't force it onto the kids. Almost crying as he finished reading my note, he told me it was the best birthday present ever. With so many people living together in one house, we all had to learn to share belongings and space. There was competition followed by compromise when it came to nearly everything: a seat on the couch, watching television program, space to work at on the kitchen table, the use of the bathroom. With the house full of little kids and little bladders, I heard a lot of, "Get out the bathroom, you're taking too long." I learned to show up on time at meals, and if I ate fast, I wanted seconds. As one of the older children in the family, I did my share of babysitting, but the moms mostly helped each other out with that. My mom would generally ask me to watch only her kids, so it never seemed like I was being given too much responsibility or being burdened. If all the parents went somewhere, there were usually several of us older kids watching over our own younger siblings. It took a few years to catch on that not everyone accepted my family. I probably didn't get as much attention about it because my last name is different from that of Aunt Alina's or Aunt Vicky's kids. In 7th grade, my history teacher was giving a lesson on how the Mormon pioneers came to Utah, and he brought up polygamy. Personally, he said, "I think all polygamous men are slut dogs." That night, I told my parents what the teacher had said. They contacted the principal to complain about the teacher's comment. My parents always told us to be careful whom we talked to about our family, not because they feared being arrested, but because they knew that some people would make fun of us. I wasn't afraid to tell people. I just didn't know how to bring it up, so most of the time I didn't. Sometimes my friends learned about it through their siblings who knew my older brothers. I mostly went to my friends' homes, inviting only friends I really trusted to my house. I was more afraid to tell people how big my family was than to tell them I had 3 mothers. If I was asked how many kids there were in my family, I would usually answer very carefully. My mom has, and then fill in the answer of however many she had at the time. Sometimes I would say my aunts and their children also live with us. By high school, my family background didn't seem like a big deal. Most of the kids I knew were open-minded and made up their own opinions about my family and me. Their parents were more likely to be judgmental. I played club soccer for years and was on my high school's team. I had never said anything to my teammates about my family, but in 2007, after my mom went on to Oprah to talk about polygamy, one teammate's dad started acting really standoffish. All the dreams and stuff that it seemed like Robin wanted, this family was kind of doing. Because Robin wanted a book, this family already had a book. Robin wanted to be on Oprah, she was on Oprah in 2007. Robin wanted a store, this family had their own business. Interesting. If I said anything to him, he would just stare without acknowledging me. Though he was friendly and talkative with my teammates, he kept it up for weeks. One day, that dad came to our house to give me a ride to a game. I was still getting ready, so my friends had to come knock on the door to get me. When I got to their car, my friend's dad turned to me and said sharply, "Don't you ever make me have to send my daughter to your door again." Shortly after that, I quit catching rides with them. It was too uncomfortable. I sneaked around behind my parents' backs with boys during high school and even kissed some of them. I really liked one boy who was a Mormon and super good kid. He would get so scared when he came to our house that he would literally shake when he saw my dad, who was buff and bald and intimidating. The boys felt guilty because he knew we were engaging in inappropriate behavior. I learned a lot about guys and about myself and wouldn't take it back. But I soon realized I didn't want casual relationships like the one I had with that boy. I set higher moral standards for myself about how to dress, whom I associated with, and the kind of behavior I wanted to engage in before marriage. My parents were consistent and sincere, but not forceful in teaching us about our faith, about their faith, and what they believe. We learned good principles during our family Sunday school, but also during family activities. On some family nights, we read together from such books as To Kill a Mockingbird, a family favorite, and The Work and the Glory, a 9-part series about a functional Mormon family. My dad had always said that he had hopes that we all get a testimony about the religion. In other words, that we would feel our hearts touched personally by the Holy Spirit in a way that reinforces the truth of our religion, but that we each have to make that decision ourselves. So that is what a testimony is. You would be filled and touched personally by the Holy Spirit in a way that reinforces their religion. He encouraged me to attend different churches, from Baptist to other fundamentalist churches, while I was growing up, so I understand that others believe differently. My mom is the same way. We talked about her decision to live plural marriage, but she's never told me I have to live it myself. I recently had a testimony about my faith and now know I want to live plural marriage someday. Okay. I came into that decision by watching my parents' example, and through my own prayers. I know it will be hard, but I know it's the right thing for me. But that's in the future. Right now, I'm attending college in Southern Utah and plan to become a dental hygienist. I wonder what has come of her. My real dad has never been a big part of my life. By my choice, I see him only about 3 times a year. I am really close, though, to some of my sisters and their mothers from my first family. Our family ties remain strong, and I love and care about them very much. I love the fact that these children were not encouraged to abandon their previous family like we saw with Robin's children. These children were still encouraged and told it was okay to have their relationship. People think plural marriage is about what's going on underneath the covers. That's not it. In 2006, I went on a television talk show with my mom and sister Laura. The host asked if I thought my dad loved my mom more than the other moms. I was shocked by the question and responded with a loud no. The audience cracked up laughing, which was embarrassing. I thought it was an absurd question. My dad loves all my moms equally. We're pretty much like any other family and aren't better or worse people because of our choice to have this particular kind of family. I don't think I should be treated differently or judged unfavorably just because I have a lot of brothers and sisters and more than 2 parents who love me. And that is the end of chapter 11. What do you all think? Let me know down below. Thanks again. As I said before, go ahead and hit that like button. Leave a comment down below. I love the comments. I may not respond right away, but I do respond. Thanks again. Until next time.